brilliant. It's genius. Yeah.
This guy was.
I'm sure you know he was the former head of MI6 and was so at the heart of British secret intelligence for nearly 40 years. Having served and posts across the world, he was head of MI6 during September the 11th attacks and the invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan. Codenamed C, he is the only second holder of that position to be named publicly. He has subsequently expressed concerns over the growth of the use of surveillance in Britain, and in 2008 was asked to testify against allegations that MI6 were involved in the death of Princess Diana. He also tells me that I've damaged his reputation for punctuality by starting 5 minutes late, which I'm proud of. But without further ado now, could you please put your hands together for Sir Richard Miller.
Intelligence officers always turn up exactly on time. You can work out why. Thank you for the kind introduction. I'm going to talk principally in relation to the issue of Wikileaks tonight, and I'm happy to answer questions either on that or more widely on other subjects. So, the theme I've chosen is how much secrecy does the state need? And the short answer to that question is it needs some, but actually not as much as you think. And you may be surprised to hear me say that. But obviously that needs to be significantly expanded. Now the first thing I really want to mention is the idea of trends which underwrite our understanding of important contemporary events. It's not so much the trends as it were allowed to predict the future. They do maybe help you to understand the future better. And I would definitely draw parallels at the moment between the wave of political unrest which is sweeping through the Middle East in a very exciting and rather extraordinary fashion, and also the Wikileaks phenomenon. Really, what ties these two events together, and of course a number of other events, is the diffusion of power away from states and the empowerment of individuals and small groups of individuals via new technology. And although I think we have understood for a significant amount of time already, there's a seismic shift of power happening in terms of this relationship between the state and the individual. We've really been much less good about anticipating what its consequences will be. Just 25 years ago, few of you will certainly know what I'm talking about, the state actually had a monopoly of communications. But first of all, a word of warning about Wikileaks, and a word of warning about Egypt. In my experience in this sort of area, the media loves stories which is essentially about itself and projects the importance of the fifth estate. And I think our perception of both Wikileaks and of what's happening in Egypt is at the moment largely media driven. And if there's a purpose in my talk, I hope it's to sort of rebalance the equation and give you a slightly different point of view. I mean, just a point about what's been happening in Cairo. It's not just about the discontent of a rising middle class in the face of a totalitarian government communicating through social networks. Bear in mind, when we're talking about Egypt, 44% of the population is illiterate and exists on less than $2 a day. And what we have to remember, and I haven't seen the BBC really as successive journalists who present themselves as tourists in this square. What what you have to bear in mind is that these forces in Egypt are also being unlocked by this extraordinary political change. And it's actually quite difficult to predict where this change will end up. And I'm happy to answer questions about Egypt, probably being one of the few people in this room, maybe anyone, because we certainly met Mubarak, and certainly met Omar Suleiman and other key players. Anyway, back to Wikileaks. That's the issue I want to concentrate on in thinking about these very significant technological changes. Now, I think I would pose two key questions to begin with. How is the public interest actually served by official secrecy? And how is the public interest served by revelated journalism? And it's very difficult to answer either of these questions with any precision because they're too broad and too indeterminate in their general sense. But they can be answered almost always on a case-by-case basis. And it's through, as it were, examining the particular incident and asking the questions that you end up, I think, with a body of decisions that create a measure against which to consider the specific. So the questions are, I'm not going to try to answer them, I'm just making sure that you realise that's the background. How is the public interest served by official secrecy? And how is the public interest served by revelated journalism? But there are, as I already indicated in talking about trends, further issues of principle which I'll also, I think, try to explain a bit further. The first is the extent to which technological advance is really altering the norms of civic and private life. And obviously the growth of social networks is the most obvious example of this. But they are shifting our perceptions of what might be described as public space and what might be designated as private and confidential space. I think most of you would accept in this room that individuals do require a degree of privacy, even if you have a tendency to give it up voluntarily on the internet, I suspect. And I think it would be generally accepted that most organisations, large and small, also require moments in their existence for the benefit of their members, confidentiality. However, there's absolutely no question that technology is significantly shifting these domains and altering the relationship quite fundamentally between citizens and government. And this is why the whole Wikileaks issue is very important, dramatically highlights the problem. Now, it's quite extraordinary that if you read about Wikileaks in our rather tired media, I meant to days about that judgment, there isn't much consideration of the problems, but they do have urgency, and they do, as it were, or they should worry audibly. You know, we are being hit by a tidal wave of technological advance. So what I think is important in this is the Assange story as such is ultimately a distraction. He's a very undignified flag, in my opinion, for a very important issue. And why do I think he is an undignified flag carrier? I'll give you several reasons. First, he's completely unable to